Welcome to another episode of Career Conversations. Today we have the pleasure of interviewing James Pacheco. Um, he's got over 20 years experience in the gambling industry. He started off as a content creator, content writer for the betting industry. He started working at Betfair, which is where we originally met, and then moved on to Betson, and he's now a freelancer. So, hello, James.
Hello, Crystal, and thanks for having me.
Welcome. Well, let's start from where you are now. Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your current role as a freelance content writer?
Yeah, sure. So I live in Portugal, and I've lived here for about the last 7 years now. And I'm a content writer with particular expertise in online betting, so both sports and casino writing. I've probably had about 18 or 20 different clients that I've worked with over the years, and at the moment I work with about six or seven. Um, uh, in the last year or so, I'd say I've done mostly sports related stuff. In previous years, I did more casino and casino related stuff. My clients are a combination of content agencies, like, for example, All in Global, used to be known as All in
Okay.
Translations. They could be operators, like I write a lot of stuff for Betfred directly for their blog, and some of them are affiliates, affiliate websites themselves who need content. So it could be anything from, a football or cricket betting preview to a guide to betting on a particular sport, or a guide to betting on a particular market, or a landing page about payment methods or how to use bonuses, sportsbook reviews, casino reviews, slot reviews.
Wow.
Pretty much anything that involves any sort of money being bet on something, I could probably do for you.
Okay, let's dive into your journey. How did you get started in the gambling industry?
Yeah, so my degree is actually in something completely different. My degree is in law. I
Oh, yeah.
graduated in 2001 from Birmingham University. It wasn't something I ever really thought about doing once I'd started the degree. I never saw myself as a lawyer at all. Um, my first job was in a sports marketing agency called Octagon, where I worked on a motorcycling world championship. Then I had a couple of years at a media agency in London, where I did quantitative research on behalf of brands to help with
Mhm.
advertising spend. So very, very different. Yeah, but I decided that kind of my heart wasn't really in it. It was sports and sports betting that I was really interested in. Nothing particularly remarkable about how I joined Betfair. I was registered with a recruitment agency. They sent me for an interview at Betfair way back in 2004. I didn't even really know what a betting exchange was,
Yeah.
but they're sort of the new kids on the block. It was the beginning of the online betting boom, sort of 2004. Yeah, late 90s. You still had a few online sports books and casinos, but sort of 2003, 2004 is when things really started to explode. I
Mhm.
took what was, quite frankly, an entry-level job. I don't think they even asked for a degree for the role that I was doing, but it was a foot in the door into an industry that I was very excited about, that I thought I had a long-term future in. So it was worth taking almost a step back and going for a job like that. It was in the operations department, pretty straightforward stuff. But after 2 years, I took the sort of natural step up to go into communications, and I worked for a couple of years as a press officer. And it was also that time that Betfair was launching their own blog with betting tips and betting previews and so on. So I was one of the first two editors of that website, which to this day, betting.betfair, I'd probably put right up there as one of the best betting websites in the world, full stop. So I'm very proud
Yeah.
to have been part of that to begin with all those years ago. Then I relocated to Malta, worked at Betfair for another year in Malta, then moved to Nordic Bets just as it was, just at been at the same time been acquired by Betson. And I worked for a couple of years as a copywriter there, and later as a content manager for Betson. And then in 2016, I just decided that I'd become a little bit jaded by too many years of office life, targets, all hands meetings, keynotes, speakers, pressures, targets, all this sort of stuff. I need a little bit of a break from it. So I had a go at freelance writing. It wasn't necessarily a long-term plan to be doing it for this long, but was lucky enough to get a couple of clients to begin with, and sort of after a year or so, I realized that I could make it work for me in a number of ways. So I've kind of stuck with it ever since.
What are the aspects of working as a content writer in the gambling industry that you enjoy most? Could you share 1 to 3 highlights?
Sure. Well, I mean, the first one is probably more specific to freelancing than it is necessarily to content writing or to betting.
Yeah.
And the clue in the words freelancer, Crystal, which is the first part of it, which is free. Does it mean that I work for free? It means that I have quite a lot of freedom,
Yeah.
which is quite an obvious thing to say, but it's worth explaining. So I've got freedom in terms of the hours that I work. So both in terms
Mhm.
of the number of hours that I work and the time of day that I work. I'll be the first one to admit that I'm not wired as a morning person. I'm no good first thing in the morning, so I've sort of given up trying to be productive at those times. Find them a lot more productive around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm even productive at 10 o'clock at night. So the freedom to work whatever hours you want is a big plus,
Mhm.
as is the ability to be able to work from different places. So I'm lucky enough that I can go away to Greece for a month and to South Africa for another month. And while I'm away, I've got a little office set up in both those places. So you can be in different places and still do your work, which gives you a lot more freedom. And also the freedom to kind of pick and choose the type of work I want to do and the clients that I want to work with. So some clients can be quite difficult. Some clients can be quite demanding. Some clients, the work for them requires more time than it would for a similar fee for another client. So you've also got freedom to kind of pick and choose the clients you want to work with. So that would be the first thing. Second thing I like is I'm naturally interested in sports and sports betting. So to be able to do something as a day job that I'm already passionate and interested about is a big plus. I'm sure that if people who are maybe insurance salesmen or plumbers and so on, these are very good jobs, but these are probably not things that these people talk about at the weekend when they're off duty, whereas these are the things I talk about because I'm passionate about them. So kind of to be able to work in something you really like is obviously a big plus. And for the third one, I'm sure a lot of people are going to laugh when I say this, but just not having to do meetings on a weekly basis is a huge plus for me. I think as someone who did, pay their dues in the corporate world, there are too many meetings. There are meetings about meetings. There are meetings to plan other meetings. There are
Yeah.
meetings to be seen that you are at meetings. There are people who like the sound of their own voice too much. There are people who ask questions for the sake of it, and I thought a lot of it was quite a waste of time, and that my time was better served back at my desk. So that the fact that in this line of work I don't really have that is probably more of a positive for me than it may first seem. So those would be the three for me. One of them is, you're going to have to accept, and again, this is more specific to being a freelancer than a content writer. You're going to have to accept there's a lot of uncertainty in your job. I've lost clients who've gone bankrupt and, don't have any more money to spend. I've lost clients who got acquired by someone else and brought in their own people. I've lost clients who, for regulatory reasons, weren't allowed to operate in a particular country anymore, which, was out of their control. So, a really good client that you've had for years that you have today, you may not have them tomorrow, and you're just going to have to accept that that's part of it. So there's a lot of uncertainty, not just in terms of having a client, but the amount of work that they're going to throw your way. So a client who's asked for 10,000 words every month for the last 2 years isn't necessarily going to need those 10,000 words the following month because something may have changed. So the uncertainty behind it is can be quite difficult. And another thing that I've had to deal with is, I say I'm a content writer, and I am, but some clients can have some expectations that a writer is expected to do a lot of things other than write. For example, uploading content onto a website that requires meta descriptions, meta titles, downloading images, uploading images, headers, links, all these things. For me, they're not part of being a content writer. That's a content
Hmm.
management. If people want to do that, then they should be content managers, not content writers. So I've had
Hmm.
to tell, clients from the lesson I learned of having to do that and having wasted a lot of time uploading content, got to say to someone, well, I'll write the content, I'll do a good job of that, but I'm not uploading the content as part of that deal. Maybe if you wanted to pay me extra, or maybe if you do it on an hourly basis, that's different. But I don't think content management is a part of writing. And similarly, some people will say, well, I want a sports book review, but I want you to open an account there, and I want you to fund it, and I want to provide your details, and I want you to deposit, and I want you to take screenshots, and well, again, this isn't writing. You're asking for a load of other things that go beyond the
Yeah,
remit of writing. So
testing.
it's good to tell clients from very early on what are reasonable expectations, and to set a few boundaries, even if that means you're losing the client. But those are two of the challenges in what I do. Yeah.
Okay, next topic is tools and skills. What tools or software have been essential in your career as a gambling content writer?
Well, I think you're going to be a little bit disappointed here, Crystal, because quite
Except,
honestly, not many. So I've done the vast majority of my work on Word. So I
mhm,
suppose spell check in itself is a tool.
yeah,
And more recently, I've used Grammarly for some things, even though I'm not a huge fan of Grammarly. I think it can very often come up with a load of suggestions for restructuring things, rewording things that I don't necessarily agree with. I don't necessarily think taking those into account necessarily improves what I wrote to begin with. Sometimes it does.
yeah,
So those would be the only two. I have used SEO Surfer in the past, which I think is a very good tool actually, but it's just not the nature of the work I do, hasn't really required me to do it. And I know that the next section is about it, so we'll talk about it now. But spoiler alert, I really do not use AI or ChatGPT much at all.
wow,
One thing I'd like to add just at this stage is, I mean, everyone knows what the skills are for a content writer. Just moving away from tools for a second, you need to be able to
yeah,
write, you need to meet deadlines, stay within words, counts, manage your time, not make mistakes. All these things are obvious, but an important skill that's overlooked as a content writer is the ability to sell yourself. So I don't mean applying to every content writing job on the internet. I don't mean that you need to write 5 LinkedIn posts every day telling the world what you do and how good you are. That's not productive either. But you do need to constantly keep an eye out for your next good client. So,
yeah,
if there's a role or a job or a gig that really looks good, then then show some interest in it. If there's a website that you really like reading yourself, find out who the editor is, send them an email, tell them that you like their website and that you'd like to make a contribution yourself. If you meet someone on a night out who works in the same industry, talk to them. Do they need a content writer? What do they do? Can you help them? So there's
yeah,
an element of constant selling yourself. People who are far better content writers than myself, who struggle to get the work because maybe their selling side of things isn't as good. So, we're talking about tools and skills, which is why I'm mentioning this. But the ability to sell and sell your work and sell your value is a very important part of this job. I think it was about 2.5 years ago when ChatGPT was first created. There was a mad panic that, you know, content writers were going to become extinct like dinosaurs. that that the ChatGPT was going to be able to provide the same level of quality. We're talking about if you do the prompt properly, it's going to come up with articles 2,000 words in a matter of seconds. Anyone
Yeah.
who's put some prompts into ChatGPT will know how quick it is. And I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't genuinely worried. But I think that, 2.5 years down the line, the proof's in the pudding. And I think ChatGPT can do a lot of things very well, including content writing, but it will never be at the same level as a very good and experienced human doing it. I'll just give you one example. My wife was recently working, who's also a content writer, was working for a company who wanted slot reviews. And they wanted her to use ChatGPT to write slot reviews, which with the correct prompts was very quick to do. But she found that there were quite a few mistakes. For example, in the RTP of particular slots, because you've got to remember how ChatGPT works. ChatGPT scans the whole of the internet and finds out as much information based on what's out there. But the problem she was encountering was that for the RTP of slots, they were almost always wrong because what were on other affiliate sites was wrong to begin with. So it might say that the ITP of a particular slot was 95%, but when she went on the software provider's company, NetEnt, Microgaming, Elk Studios, wherever it was, she found that it
Yeah.
was actually 96%. So all
Hmm.
this information that people take for granted that is correct that ChatGPT is producing isn't necessarily the case. It's just taking the consensus of what's on the internet. So I kind of was like a little bit of a crossroads, and I said, "Well, James, do you want to become, an expert on using ChatGPT that tells it what to do, and you learn the technical side of it and the prompts and so on, and reinvent yourself, or do you want to remain in your own niche and do everything from scratch?" And I kind of very much preferred the second option. And thankfully, 2.5 years later, I'm still here. As is ChatGPT. I haven't really seen huge, having less work than I did as a result of ChatGPT. Sometimes not, but um, got no problems to say. I can see the value of it, but when I create content myself, I do not use it at all. Zero. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there are a couple of other elements to this. The first one is I'd actually feel quite guilty, as if I wasn't earning my money. If someone said to me, "Look, we want you to write this assignment," and most of it was done in ChatGPT, then I'd feel like I was almost cheating the system, a bit like a restaurant using, you know, something out of a can rather than making it themselves. And I also think that you can tell when things have been written by chat GPT. And in fact, a lot of clients use tools to check that you haven't been using chat GPT. So I know other content writers have been pulled up and their clients say, well, we can see that 25% of this looks like it was written by ChatGPT. There's a 25% match. And then they have to explain why that happened, how it didn't happen, re-edit it. So I'm
Yeah.
never going to have that problem because I'm never using ChatGPT to begin with. So it's always
Yeah.
going to be 0% from me because I haven't even opened it. So um, so here we are.
Okay, let's talk about the recent layoffs in the media and affiliate companies like Better Collective, LifeScore Group, and Katina Media. What are your thoughts on this?
I think only, that the companies themselves or the board of directors or the shareholders, whatever, will know the real genuine reasons why they've made all these cuts. I don't think they've really explained their reasons. First of all, my sympathies to all these people who have been laid off. It's never a good time to lose your job, and 2024 is a particularly challenging time for that. And I hope that they all find something soon after something really bad happened that clearly wasn't their fault. A rare example where you've actually got, in a way, more job security as a freelancer than you do as in a full-time job. Because, like I said, I've lost clients, but if you have five or six, that's one. You got another five to fall back on. Whereas, most people who just work full time for one client, if they're laid off from that, then they don't have a fallback. So it's one of the rare examples where I've actually kind of benefited from being a freelancer. It could be that the affiliate industry isn't quite as powerful and valuable as it was a few years ago for whatever reason, and that these content agencies who are producing so much content for affiliate websites, don't need to produce it because the affiliate websites aren't asking for it so much. That could be one reason. Second reason probably is chat GPT. And just going back to the story about my wife and the incorrect information, the point she made to that client was, well, I'm finding this job difficult to do because I'm having to amend a lot of things that are incorrect. And the client said, well, do you know what? We'd rather you write 6 articles a day that are incorrect than write 2 a day that are completely correct. So I think some people are happy to go down the route of using AI or ChatGPT to produce content that is of a lower quality, but is obviously a fraction of the price. So I think that probably did contribute to it as well. And I think these are going to be hard times for people working in content, including myself, because I think you got a big pool of people who've been laid off from full-time jobs who are entering, the competitive market of freelance content writing, especially for betting. So all these people who've been laid off are probably going to be looking for freelance gigs. And actually, just today, I also wrote another. I read something interesting on LinkedIn where someone was saying, everyone fancies themselves a content writer these days. You studied English at university. You want to be a content writer now. Your teacher said you were good at writing stories when you were a kid. You're at loose end. You want to be a content writer now. Someone at work told you that you wrote emails that were good and easy to understand. This person wants to be a content writer now. So it's going to become quite a saturated market over the next few years, partly as a result of this layoff, partly a result of a lot of people wanting to do this. But, as ever, we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, then finally, let's talk about advice. Final advice for job seekers. As an experienced content creator, what advice would you give to those wanting to enter the gambling industry, particularly in content writing?
So the first thing would be whether you're completely new to the industry but are interested in it and want to get into it, or whether you have a little bit of experience. It's going to sound like a really obvious thing to say, but very often the most obvious things are the most true. Learn as much as you possibly can about your industry. Okay, go on LinkedIn. Other websites that have gambling industry news. Learn which companies are doing well, which aren't. Learn which companies are acquiring which companies. Learn about product launches. Read about this stuff. If you want to be reviewing slot reviews, as an in-house copywriter or a freelance content manager, go out and play slot reviews. 99% of them you can play for free. So you're not risking your own money. Find out which slots you like. Find out which software providers you like. Find out how free spins work. Find out how bonuses work. Find out which games have a higher ITP. Find out how one slot compares to another. One of these days you're going to be writing about it, so you'll be much better prepared. If you're into sports, open a couple of betting accounts. Even if you're just placing a €1 bet once a day, see how the odds on one company compares to the odds on another. How does live streaming on Betfair of a football match compared to live streaming on Bet365? How long does it take to make a deposit on PayPal versus a deposit versus a bank transfer? Is customer service, do they take 12 hours to get back to you about a simple question, or do they take 2 hours? Is it better betting on tennis at Boyle Sports or Betfred? Why? How is it easy to open an
Mm.
account? So the more prepared you are, um, it's like that's it's like Gary Player, the golfer, used to say all those years ago. The more I practice, the luckier I get. There's a lot of truth
Yeah.
to it. So learn as much as you possibly can about the sports industry. Talk to people, if you meet someone in a bar, what do you do? I'm an affiliate manager. What does being an affiliate manager of sportsbook involve? Who do you work with? How do you make money? How do affiliates make money? How does one campaign, compared to another. So as much the more knowledge you have, whether you're already in the industry or whether you want to get into it, every piece of information
Exactly.
and knowledge will be useful to you at some stage. The second thing would be sports and casino are both types of betting, but they're obviously very different animals. I think it's easier for a sports betting writer to learn casino than it is for a casino to learn the intricacies of sports, which can have a lot of very details. But try to master both of them, because a lot of companies will want a copywriter that does both. So
Mm.
you'll need to have a good knowledge of both. And if you're going into freelancing, you're obviously, spreading your net a lot more. Over the years, I've had some years where it's been 70% casino, 30% sportsbook. At the moment, it's probably 80% sportsbook, 20% casino. But if I hadn't been able to do both of them all these years as a freelancer, there would have been some years where I just wouldn't have had enough work. So, try and master both products rather than just one. That would be an important piece of advice. Just in terms of freelancing, this is a very practical thing, but keep your paperwork in order. Because every time you do an assignment, if you've written 1,000 words, keep a spreadsheet, right? On this day, I did 1,000 words for this client on this topic. This is the fee. And at the end of the month, when it comes to invoicing time, rather than going through 40 articles you've written and finding out what your word count was for each one, it's all there on a spreadsheet, and it's going to save you a lot of time in the long run. Invoice on time. Some companies, if you invoice a couple of days late, rather than getting paid the next month, you're only going to get paid in 2 months' time. So make sure you keep, up to date with your invoices. Follow up on your invoices. Mistakes happen. Invoices go unpaid. Staff change. So follow up on your invoices to make sure that you are getting paid. Keep your taxes in order. you know, Freelancer, doesn't matter. You still have to pay your taxes. Make sure all that's in order so you don't get any nasty surprises and huge tax bills in 2 or 3 years' time. Do those things by the book. Be organized, because they're important parts of this job as well.
Okay. So thank you for your time, James.
Thank you.